So we've got Mark Thompson, who's honestly, I think he spoke at like our second session, maybe our first session. Mark, I don't remember.
One of the
Do you remember? Yeah,
Either
somewhere
first
right in
or
there.
second, yeah.
Oh, you know what? Yeah, it was you and Carrie.
Yeah, he was the first.
Yeah, you and Carrie. Yeah,
And Carrie, that's right. That's right.
So yeah, he was one of our first speakers. Now he's one of our first speakers for 2021. And yeah, he's a dev avocado at Google, and he's gonna try to get us all back into Angular. we wish him luck.
Oh, I love that. That's awesome. That was so good. All right, let me go ahead and get the screen sharing together so we can hang out, folks, and have a good time. Yeah, I just need a thumbs up from somebody as soon as they can confirm that they see my slides. Okay, Joe, I see your hand up. Folks, this is going to be so much fun. And yes, I am going to try to get you back into Angular, but not because I'm compelling, but because Angular itself is a very interesting platform for people to write code on. So today's talk is called Angular and the Supercharged CLI, and I'm going to explain why I call it supercharged. My name is Mark, and for folks who have not met me before, my name is Mark. I work as a developer relations engineer over at Google, and I'm actually on the Angular team, so I get to talk to folks when I hear feedback about Angular. I actually get to share that feedback with people who have influence over how things move forward. And yeah, so really great time. Really excited to be here. Thank you to Marky and Joe for having me, inviting me, and always welcoming me to be a part of this amazing community. And as soon as we're back together, I'm looking forward to just being in the room with everybody again. All right, let's go. There you go. Bye-bye. All right, so you may think you know what Angular is, but I think it's been a long time. So let's talk about what is Angular and kind of get a good feel for Angular now in 2021. What does Angular in 2021 really mean? So here's how we like to describe it. Angular is a platform for building scalable applications. Angular has this sort of reputation where people think of it as a very complex system, but here's how I think about Angular in terms of scaling. Angular is like a pool at your local park. There is a ton of fun to be had in the 3-foot section, but as soon as you're ready to start swimming and going deeper and deeper, Angular is there waiting for you still. It's still the same body of water, and it scales with you and your application. Here are some of the things that I really think make Angular cool, and even for context, before taking this role, I didn't know Angular, right? So I joined Google in 2020, so I didn't know Angular. I had done AngularJS before, but I had to learn Angular, right? So the most modern version of this framework. Here are some things that I think are cool about it. Our integrated tooling is top notch. We have things like our CLI. Way back in the early days when TypeScript was first around, we adopted TypeScript. We partnered with Microsoft to get TypeScript as a part of Angular. And some of you historians will remember, we started off Angular with a different strongly typed language that we were writing called AtScript. And then we're like, no. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We'll integrate with TypeScript. And so there's a lot of really strong tooling. The integration with the IDE, as you'll see today, really sets Angular apart in terms of how valuable the tooling is. Then there's best practices. Now, the reason I say best practices are a part of Angular is because things like, as I just mentioned, are strongly typed language, right? The way you write your code in a modular fashion. So things that build your application from the start to be scalable, that is just a part of Angular. And yes, it's very opinionated. And yes, we have our way that we think you should do it, but we consider those to be good best practices. Put your data in a service. That's a good best practice. Modularize your code. That's a good best practice. If you can use strongly typed JavaScript, good best practice. And all of that stuff is built into Angular from the jump. And wait, here's what I think is the best part, folks. It's the power of the Angular community. So even though Google created Angular, we build it and move it forward together. You can go to the GitHub repository for Angular, and you can see the PR submitted from us in public, just like you can submit a PR if you want to help improve Angular. And I think the power of that community, is really interesting because there are people who are really passionate about Angular that when we release something, they get really intense. Like, where's my new feature? Because they have so much buy-in in it. And it makes sense because Angular has helped them to build things that they need. And now they want to make sure that the platform is moving along to continue to support their needs. Now I'm going to introduce you to someone. This is my kid. All right. And if you follow me on Twitter, you know that I actually call him the heir. And I say he's the heir to like the Thompson fortune. But that's kind of a funny thing because anybody who knows kids knows that if you have a kid, you don't really have any money because they take all your money for all their needs. So it's kind of hard. So he's going to find out later on in life that he's really the heir of nothing because we don't have any money left because of him, especially when college finally gets here. But here's what he said to me last week. He said, hey, Dad, can you make a cool app? Now, this is a 3-year-old. It's like, yo, Dad, I'm 3 and I want you to make an app. And I want you to help people find food pantries. So that's, so, 3-year-old. All right. And so that's really interesting because I think that with a lot of demonstration things that you can do, like, can we build something cool to help people? And that's how I like to build demos now. That's the way I kind of focus my demos. How can we build something cool to help people? And so here's what I came up with. Let's build this helpers app, right? Like this is the start of an app where you could see a listing of food bank locations, and then you get some details, and then you could take this and expand it to do so much. Remember, I told you, you got the 3-foot side of the pool that you can have a lot of fun in, and then you can go into the deeper side as you go with Angular. Now, how could we approach an app like that in something like Angular? You probably are used to things like Svelte, Vue. There's this other, what's the name of that tiny little library? Not that many people use it. It begins with an React, I think, and there's React. And so all these libraries and frameworks have something in common. They have this idea of components. And so Angular also has the idea of components. And in Angular, components are really 3 parts. Okay, and this is where some of the modularity comes in, because you have your TypeScript for your component class, where you're going to build out all your logic. Then you have your your CSS, or you can use preprocessors like Less and Sass, but you have your styles to kind of figure out how should your component look. And then you have your regular HTML so that you can leverage all those HTML skills to build out your templates. And with this combination of CSS and HTML, well, you get to take advantage of just what you already know how to do in HTML and CSS. Part of the thing that I like that makes it compelling. And then TypeScript is just moving you forward because you get to use new features of JavaScript. And if you haven't heard of TypeScript before, TypeScript's just I was going to say subset. It's actually a superset of JavaScript. And there's some, and I tell people this, there's some fanciness in TypeScript that is not like compatible like to JavaScript. Like there are constructs that don't exist, but you will have things in TypeScript that are either future versions of JavaScript features, etc. TypeScript, regardless if you choose Angular or not for your projects, I always recommend people to get on TypeScript train if you can. All right, so let's break this down. When I look at this, and I'm sure you React people can see this as well, you look at a UI, and what do you start to do? You start to break it down into components. So first, I see on the outside here, maybe a parent component, okay? And then on the left-hand side, at least my left, I see the list of the food banks, and then I see maybe a component for the food bank itself that has some data. And then finally, on the right-hand side, I see a component for the details. So when you click on the details, that component should get it going. Now, we need to jump into the CLI time. Wherever you are, right in your place, I need you to do me a favor before we continue. I need you to get your left hand up. All right, and you see this? That's a high five from me to you, because this thing is about to get awesome. All right, so I like to bring everybody along together. So let's make sure we all know what CLI is. Command line interface, and this is a way for you to type in commands on your terminal, on your computer, and just make it do stuff, right? So there are lots of cool tools like this. One of the most famous ones that has a beautiful command line interface. I thought Ruby on Rails had they kind of set the standard for what CLIs would be when it comes to like scaffolding and such, because it has such a great CLI. Even GitHub now has this. They already had a CLI kind of where you could interact with Git through, but now they have even their own CLI, and it just hit 1.0 like in Q4 of like 2020. So CLIs are really popular and they're really helpful. So for us, here's what you need to do to get started with Angular. This is it. npm install-g for global @angular/CLI. This is going to install the Angular CLI, and then from there you can do the following. You can run ng plus a command. So that ng is going to be our CLI for Angular. and you just run a command. The command we're going to run is ng new, and then the name of our project, which is going to be helpers-app. I want to be like a startup, so I'm going to take out all the vowels, right? Got to make it cool. Got to make it interesting for the young ones. All right. So ng new helpers-app, and so this is going to set up our our starter project for us. All right. So let's just see if it's actually the life we want to live. All right. So I'm going to start right here. So I'm in my project. I've already made this app to save us some time. So I already did the ng new. First thing I'm going to do is ng serve. So let me do this just to make it a little bit bigger so we can make sure we can see what I'm typing. ng surge. ng serve. And then I'm going to tack on one little thing here. So I told you the CLI is supercharged. So now we have support for HMR in the CLI for Angular. HMR stands for hot module replacement, not reload, actually replacement. This is a Webpack thing, right? So Webpack 5 brought this in. We use Webpack under the hood as a part of the CLI. And so with HMR, what that's going to do is every time we make an update to our application, it's only going to like send over the parts that have been changed from the files that we changed, right? So that's going to prevent us from doing that full refresh of our screen. And what does that do? I know. You could type it in the chat, but I'm going to type it for you. Boost developer productivity, supercharge you. All right, let's go. So now that we got this running, our ng serve is going to be the way we launch out our development server, right? Our built-in development server. So going back to our integrated tooling, this is how it's going to help us. All right, we're ready to go. So I'm going to go over to my browser. I'm going to hit reload. And this is the default app that comes when you build a new Angular app. So we give you this to just have something, right? Like kind of like your Hello World app. And what I'm going to do is we're going to get this party super started. Now that we have that set up, now let's break this down, right? So now we have this. Let's make this. Let's set up our container, our bigger app. So I'm going to go into, so let's see if we drop this out. All right. So you have a bunch of files. Your index.html is kind of like your bootstrap file, right? Where you have to include your Angular code, all that kind of stuff. We do all that stuff for you from the start. And then you can have your global styles as well. Now, I need some global styles for this app. I need a reset. So I just have my CSS reset in there. There's a small little nudge on the screen. You probably couldn't see it because it was super tiny, but there's a small little nudge where you saw it change. So now I have my reset installed. So first things first, I'm going to go to app.component.html. So here's that default code that makes this website that you can see on this side. Here's all the default code. I'm just going to take this out of here. We don't need that. I'm going to do what you've been dying for me to do. Wait, we're going to make it fancy. Don't play. Uh-oh. Let's go. Look at that. Look at that. You know that feels good. You know that feels good. If you got it going this far, I want you to know something. I'm proud of you. All right, friends. So here's what we're going to do next. I have some styles that I want to use that just for like buttons, my own little style sheet. I don't really want to use like a Bootstrap or anything for these types of things. So I just use my style. So I'm going to do my helper styles. So I just have some like styles for colors and yeah, like my background color, some display stuff, right? So there's no magic here, right? But I just set up my own buttons and stuff. This is just to keep everything lightweight for me, my preference. Now, remember I told you that this is an HTML template that goes along with my component. So we're in the main parent app component. Here's where some of the value of that comes in. Now, Joe gave a talk about this before, and it's a great tool. So I'm going to do main. Inside of my main, I'm going to do header. Inside of my header, I'm going to do an H1. Inside that H1, I want to do my helpers like title, right? And then I'm just going to hit tab. So because this is regular HTML, Emmet still works here. And so I'm leveraging my HTML tools to kind of make my life easier. All right, and then next to this thing, you know what I want to have? I also need my logo. My logo is an SVG, so I'll just kind of inline that thing, right? So now I have my logo. I'm using snippets to like get this code typed in because you do not want to see me go to CSS tricks for the next 30 minutes trying to figure out how to center stuff. That's not the best use of your time. And I already know it. You know why? Because I care about you. All right, friends. We kind of have something going. If I sent this to my project manager, they're going to just go, well, this is what I asked you for. And this is what you gave me. It doesn't look the same. So let's actually make this look nice. So I have some styles here that we're going to use. And so we have our app component style. So that just fixed up. So there's quite a few styles in here. I'm using Flexbox to align stuff. Yes, I could use Grid. Grid is great. If you can understand it, Grid is great. I will tell you that. And it's not hard to understand, just the language is just not intuitive to me. That's a personal feeling. The language is not intuitive, not like I like Flex. Okay, very cool. So listen, when I go to my stand-up tomorrow, I'm gonna show them this and they're gonna say, yeah, you got the logo in there and the border, background color, that looks good. And they're gonna say, okay, what are you gonna do next? What are you gonna work on today? So now that we have that part, let's just start working on our list here, okay? So how would you do a list in Angular, right? Like what would you do to make a list in Angular? So first, I want to do some good semantic HTML so that way people with screen readers and assistive technology, they can use my site effectively, right? So you really want to try to do the best you can, not just throw divs everywhere. I'm going to put a section here. It's for a good reason. All right, so what I would usually do, if I want to do, let's say okay, wait. First, before I continue, how is the size of my code? Is it too small, too big? Let me see it in the chat. Megan, you're right. It is awesome, but I don't know how to use it. Okay. In terms of the size is okay though. Looks good. All right, good. I want you to be able to see it without getting too close. All right. So what I can do here is use a for loop structure. So we have a thing called an ng-for. So this is a directive. If you ever use Angular JS, you remember that term directive. Right, so this is like our directive. Our directives and components are kind of like two different things now. This directive is going to allow me to do a for loop. So I'm going to say, well, let's say let fbank of food banks, right? And then when I get that data, I'm going to do some interpolation. So in React, I think you only use one curly brace, and Angular use two curly braces for this part. Okay, so I want to do fbank dot name just to start. Let's get something on the screen, right? That's what we care about. Anybody see what I see? You see that error already? But it's not just like a typo error, right? This is from my HTML template, and it knows that the component class, right? My TypeScript code never declares a food bank. So again, this is a plugin for Visual Studio Code. Also for WebStorms, called the Angular Language Service. And so the Angular Language Service is smart enough to even know in your templates when you have errors in your code. Whereas, just because it's HTML, how would it know? I don't know. Well, that's where our plugin helps us out, right? Nice integrated tooling. So let's fix that. So we're going to go into our app component TypeScript class. Here's what the component looks like. This is all TypeScript. And this is we got a decorator up here that lets it know, well, this is a component. Here's how you're going to be able to use it. Here's your selector. So if you want to reference it, here's the URL to your template, and then here's where your styles live. Okay. And we have our title here. So I actually have an array of some location data. Again, you did not want to see me type this, right? Because I would have made something up that wouldn't have made a lot of sense. All right, here we go. So let me just. Are you complaining that it's type any? Look at that. Best practices coming in clean because of the way that my my linter is set up. I want to put any. I know. Now listen, I say get inside of TypeScript, get involved with TypeScript early, but don't do this. Do as I say, not as I do. Don't just throw any anywhere. Technically, I should shape this data and then give it a type. But for our purposes, I want to leave it like that. Now here's our food bank array, right, which is a property of our app component class, which makes it available to our component HTML. Our array is just it's kind of like a POJO, plain old JavaScript object, right? Object literal, or a name, description, image, location, and hours. All right, so if our life is working, you actually could see that it starts to fix itself when it first saved. I never went over here to refresh. Did you ever notice me do that? On save, it just refreshed. And so that's kind of how that's HMR helping us out, right? Every time I saved, I was able to keep working. All right, so that's looking pretty good. But again, this is what y'all want. You got your list, but here, I know what you want. This is what the people want. You want this, right? You want to look more like this. Well, let's start making that. So this isn't quite the droid that I'm looking for. So let's fix this part, okay? So what I want to do here, I'm going to throw in an article. This can stand alone technically. Did I spell article? Because I don't want to spell it wrong and spend 10 hours. All right, and I want to do food bank listing. All right, now I have that class in my component. That's how I know it's there. But here's the article, right? And now inside here, what I really want is like an app component that's called, let's say, like food bank location, something like that, right? We can go like food bank location. That feels good. But this type of thing does not exist. Supercharged CLI is going to come to the rescue. So you're getting red flags everywhere. Nobody's happy. Now, here's what you do. The CLI has a really nice feature. So you can see I'm doing ng generate. What do I want to generate? I want to generate a component. And what do I want it to be called? Food bank location. All right. Now, if I wasn't sure if that was right, I can do dry run here. Maybe I can't. Maybe it's dry dash run. There you go. So like the dry run shows me what it will look like when I do it. Even if I didn't, so it's just kind of like a dry run, right? So no changes were made. Now what I need to do, because that looks right to me, I'm just going to go ahead and run that command again without the dry run. Now, so that's running. So that's together. So now if all right, food bank location works. That's the default text that you see inside a component. And so we can go inside this component right now and have a look. So that's the text that you see right there. Food bank location works. So far, so good. If we were in person, I would ask you folks to give me a fist of 5 so I can know where our hearts are to see if we're all on the same page and see what questions we have. And is non-TS Angular completely dead? Oh, good question. Great question. So question in chat. Front, should there have been multiple food banks displayed? Yes, there should have been, and there will be as soon as we replace our ng4. And then is non-TS Angular completely dead? I actually don't know if it's completely dead, but I can just say that we're really pushing the TypeScript as like the way to go with this. I think it might be possible still.
Could I follow up on that question real quick, Mark?
Yeah, please.
The CLI, you couldn't configure it to do not TypeScript. It only does TypeScript, right? When you generate that component, it's always going to be TypeScript.
Yeah, good question. I don't know that answer. I can find out, but yeah, I don't know right offhand if you can configure it to not do TypeScript. Yeah, good question though. Super good question. Yeah, I wish I knew right offhand. All right, let's keep this party going though, because we are on a roll. So now we have our food bank location set up. Let's set up the styles for this thing, right? So it can start to look like a food bank location. That's what I want in my life. All right, so here I definitely have some. Okay, so I have my food bank location, right? So these are just the way this thing's going to be set up. And now, for fun, let's do this. If I set this up, right, to have my food bank location component, right? So that's the component, and it has this details thing. Now, if you are a React person, so there you go. So now we have it kind of looking right, but it's not right because we have no data. If you are a React person, the first thing you're probably thinking about is, yeah, this thing needs some way to uniquely, display this data, right? That's like separated, loosely coupled way to display the data. And you call that a prop, right? You send in a prop to a component and do that. We have a very similar idea where you can send in inputs to your Angular components. So the way that we do that, oh, that's the test, excuse me. All right, so the way that we do that is we want to import input, and then we put input here. Yeah. Okay, everybody's happy. Input, and then we call it details. And then this is going to be all that we need to go here, right? So we should be good to go. And that's going to allow us to pass in information into our component. Now, oh wait, I forgot my @ sign. There we go. Yeah, I needed my young add in there. And then, of course, because of the way my TypeScript is set up, it's not really happy. So I want to throw another any in here, do as I say, not as I do. All right, very, very fun. Bill's like, man, Mark, way to work at Google and just type any all the time. Like, what are they teaching you over there? I don't know what they All right, let's repeat this thing, because what we want is for our app food bank location. Oh, did you notice what happened here? I created this component after I typed it, but I never went to any modules or any place to link it. So this is a very common problem that you find where you'll create a new component, you forget to tie it into your system. Yeah, the Supercharged CLI, if you use the generator, it actually went into my module, which is kind of the way that we can organize like our resources for our application and our inputs. See, it just added it in there for me. So it updated this for me. This is something that becomes a headache over time whenever you're like writing code, big enough systems, and you keep refreshing. You can't figure out what's happening because you forgot to include it. Well, here you go. Here you go. Okay, let's see. I'm saying a question here from Dimitri. I've been using Material UI for React. Super dope. Thanks for using Material. You love the JSS. Oh, JavaScript, CSS. I see. Don't know if they use something like that for Angular. So for Angular, there is Angular Material. So Angular has first-class support for our Material plugin. We have a whole Material components feature set, which is super, super cool. Something that we're going to do a lot more talks about, a lot more content around, where you can even scaffold out like standard patterns, like dashboard patterns, standard app patterns. Angular Material does that for you, and you can just add it to your application. Very, very cool stuff. Okay, so now you saw how that got in there. We're going to do our ng4, see how we're doing on time. All right, ng4, and then we'll do let fbank, like we had before, of food banks. Let me hit that on new line. Okay, there we go. Scroll over. All right, and now I'm just going to do this. What is our input called? We call that details, right? We call it, so just so you can see where I am. Yeah, we call that details. The way my editor is set up with the like auto format, it helps me, but it hurts me, because what I would like to do just for our purposes is like have these on one line. I know people in React love that pattern, but as soon as I save, it's going to mess it up. So I'm not going to save yet. But so you can see, and then I'm going to do fbank. So as soon as I save, what we should see is on our helper side, we should just see our data. There we go, locked in. Now, I know that some of this is a little bit like hand wavy because I did all the styles beforehand, right? Just to save us some time. However, a lot of the value that we're getting out of this is, yeah, if you're rapidly prototyping, look at how much faster this is and have to do like the full screen refresh and all the other things that kind of go along with it, and how the CLI is really boosting up this opportunity for you. Oh, good question. Let's confirm that. Is kebab case mandatory? So I'm going to do something real quick just for kicks and giggles, right? Let me do ng generate. Let me do a component, and then I could do let's see, Joe component. I should be able to do this, right? And then do my dry run so I don't like blow anything up. It wouldn't blow anything up anyway, but even if we did this, I think it's still going to do @ dash to namespace it, or like kind of like a prefix, @ dash then Joe component. So let me just run it anyway without the dry run. It's not going to break anything. We're just going to have extra components.
Yeah, it's doing that. Yeah, those dashes.
It did the @ dash. Yeah. Oh, it actually broke it up. But I wonder, Joe, if you could configure in your angular.json, if you can configure it, like the naming, to be more of what you want. I don't think this has to be the way that it is, but I bet you can customize your build and output and stuff to say, here's what my naming is. I will be surprised if you can't do that. I'll be very surprised. All right, so we got this part working. What are we missing? Oh yeah, we got to get our details. Same thing with our details. So we're like really at the part where we can just start seeing all this stuff work for us. So now that we have our details, let's just add our details. Okay, so just so I don't forget my classes here, because that is totally a thing. Now I'm gonna set up my details, right? So I have, and we're gonna go through this part. We're totally gonna talk about it, and so you can understand what we're doing here. I'm not gonna brush through this. So first thing that I want to show you in this kind of code here, we have an ng container, right? And for this, it's because I didn't want to have to add like a div or some other like element I was going to throw away just to do an ng if, right? So I have my ng container there. Then I have my h1, some interpolation. Then inside here, I have my image and then the description. So selected, you might be saying, well, where does selected come from? Now let's set that up. All right, so we have our inputs in our component. Now let's set up our outputs. And also, can I just say how cool it is that there are so many people on the call who actually use Angular, so you can keep me honest. So you already know if I say something that's not real, you can like call it out, but I'm not gonna lie to you about anything, don't worry. I'm gonna keep it honest. I'm gonna keep it completely honest. Now, one of the patterns that you'll find, so everything has patterns, so does Angular. Now, one of the patterns that you'll see, so I have my input, then I can add my output. So I'm going to link this output as a way to send like an event up, like kind of propagated up. And the pattern that you'll see, if your input is like details and you want to send the changes to details up, right? I'm going to say details changed, right? That's just kind of like the pattern. All right, do you have to do this? Does it have to be exactly like this? No, you don't have to, but this is the pattern that we're going to say we're going to use, okay? And then here, details change. Well, this is a new event emitter. Oh, that always messes me up. Hold on. Okay. Yeah, I don't know why it's been doing this lately, where it just is this random event import. Not what I want. I want to bring it in along from Angular core, because if you bring it from event, that's gonna mess you up. I'm gonna tell you that now. That's gonna mess you up because you're gonna not know what happened. That had to happen to me already during the demo before, so I remember. Okay, and so you want this event emitter, and this is the way that we're gonna be able to like literally send our event up the chain. Now, where's that code that sends it back up? Well, it's actually right here. So the parentheses here, this is how I'm going to have my actual event, right? So this is click, and then there's my event. And then this is like some, this is our template code here. It looks like JavaScript, but be careful here because our template language is designed to make you familiar with the way that it works, but it's not exactly JavaScript, so you can't do all the things that you do with JavaScript here. People have tried, and then they're upset when it doesn't work that way. All right, so here's what we're gonna do. We have our details change, which is our event emitter, and then, yeah, when this happens, we're gonna emit the details. Could I have taken this snippet and put it actually in our TypeScript class? Yes, I could have. I could have done that, right? But I just put it right here for now, but I could have done that. Okay, very cool. I'll just read in the comments. So now we should be able to see our application in, let me refresh one more time. Let's see. We must be missing something. What didn't we link? Does the CLI give me some errors here? Because that should be all linked up. All right, let me restart my CLI because one thing that I know is that no tool is perfect, and sometimes you got to restart it. Anybody who uses Angular, you folks ever have to restart your dev server where you're working? I have right now.
Yeah, happens.
Yeah, sometimes it just happens. All right, we should be running. I did set selected. I saw that, Steve. That should already be set up, but let me just confirm. Let me go. So I have my selected right there. Selected looks good. Let me hop into my component. And then I'm already doing that. Did I miss a part of the code? Oh.
So I think output here, right? Output.
Yeah, I forgot to actually send it. There you go. These are the way that you learn, right? These are where you learn. I forgot to tag in my output, just like you said. That's correct, my output. So here's my details changed output. Again, a lot of value because the Angular language service knows about the details change property, which just helps you to make sure you're not spelling it wrong, right? So a little IntelliSense is definitely helpful. And then I have to set my selected. Yeah, there we go. There we go. Well, at least you folks know that I'm writing this like in front of you. There we go. See? And now we have our application. And so this is working, right? This is working. And you might be saying to yourself, well, Mark, feels good. You showed us a basic demo with Angular. Yeah, congratulations. Tap yourself on the back. Okay. But here's where we are. There's a little bit more that we can do. You know what's really interesting to me? Deployment. Deployment is always an interesting way to show a demo because then you can really give people the opportunity how to see your application as more than just something that works on your machine. And with Angular, here's how we're going to deploy. We're going to deploy to Firebase. Yes, I'm going to deploy to Firebase, but let me tell you why. The teams work together and have some really nice chemistry around the way that the Firebase plugins for Angular work. And so we're going to do that. It's time for the next 98.8. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to go back to the command line interface. I'm going to do ng add at Angular slash Angular Fire or Angular. I think it says Fire. Or is it Angular Fire? It might be Angular Fire. I really can't remember. We're going to find out right now together. So if it doesn't work, I'll know for sure. Yeah, it's not. I think it's Angular slash Fire. Yay, there we go. See? 2%. Joe, you know what's really dope? The 0.2% that our tests are being made every time we create a component. We do get some like standard tests that you can go in and update. So kinda, that's my answer to is the 0.2% equal to test. We're actually at 0.1% equals to test because the tests are created by default when you. So while that's doing here, let's have a look at that. Just for kicks and giggles, right? So we have our component spec, and then there you go. So we do have some tests, and I have some really good content coming up around this thing called the component test harness, which we've made some major improvements to the way that works, and I'm making some really dope content around how you can use it to write better component tests and how it works with asynchronous behavior. Lots of cool stuff the Angular component team has been working on, so we're going to be sharing a lot more about that. Okay, so we should be done cooking. So here's why I say that I'm going to deploy to Firebase, even though you can deploy to GitHub Pages, AWS, Azure, you can deploy to, let's see, what's another one? Heroku. All those places have plugins. If there's a place that doesn't have a plugin, you can create it and make the builder for this. Now, here's what's so amazing. I didn't do anything but just sign into Firebase beforehand just to save my password from being compromised. But when I installed the package, this is what the integration lets me do. Here's our food bank demo. Sounds good. Right. There we go. I'm in. Okay, I'm in. And guess what I'm going to do? Walk away. That's it. So again, integrated tooling, the Supercharged CLI. Because I had a project in Firebase set up, I don't have to do any configuration. You didn't see me go into the Firebase config here or do any of that type of stuff. This is just a part of how Angular CLI and the Angular tooling is really great. Now you can see the URL for our demo right now. And here's what's great. All right, I'm going to put that in the chat. You can look at that, but you might say, well, Mark, that URL was already there, so I don't believe you. So I'm going to help you out with that. The heart. Oh, I have a heart letter for Joe, Marky, and the crew. Okay, so now that is at the top of this thing. Let me just show you how. All right, done. Saved it, done. Right. Very, very cool. So now it's going to be building our production version of this. And when you do your production build with the CLI, so there's some optimizations that happen in development. Yeah, it's not going to be like, your premium build. But in production, we have configurations around doing things like inlining critical CSS. We do that as a part of your build that you can enable. We just released that in 11.1. We can inline, if you're using Google Fonts, we will inline the style sheet to take that 2 requests for the Google Fonts to be included down to just you requesting the accent, which gets you faster to that first contentful paint. And so we're all about that stuff. Now, if you just refresh your screen right now, like if you clicked on that demo link, yeah, it should say what I typed in there.
You busted it.
No.
Yeah, it's an internal error. It's not your fault.
Was it working
it's internal.
before?
Yeah, well,
Yeah, it was working before.
the fake one was, yes.
The fake one was working. All right. Let me try it again. I'm just going to deploy again. But anyway, even with that being said, let me try to get that the fake one was working. Well, these are real demos because I just deployed. Oh, okay. So that might be something that happened with my hosting provider. I'm not going to fight this right now, but you saw that this deployment is real. So let me just kind of walk you through what's going on right now. These are like the power tools that you get to use when you're working with something like Angular. You have your ng new, which helps you bootstrap your application quickly. ng serve built-in development server with HMR available for rapid prototyping and development. When you need a new service or you need a new component, you have your ng generate. And when you're ready to get this thing off of your machine, let somebody try it out, you have ng deploy, especially when you don't break it. But that is not the full story of the CLI. We have schematics that you can use, app shell, linting, testing. We keep our applications fresh with an ng update, which is a really cool thing that you can do. And the thing that I'm really interested in now is the PWA support that I can do, ng add at Angular/PWA and then turn my app into a PWA. That's pretty great. And then the community has built lots of these things that you can just include from the Angular CLI into your application. And friends, country folk, here we go. Here's what I want you to do now. You know a lot more than you knew about Angular before. Go and build great apps. And tell me about it on Twitter. You can find me at Mark Texan. If you want to get to the slides, scan this code or go to marktexan.com/resources. Okay, friends, there you have it.
Woo!
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, very nice.
Glad to do it.
So I'm curious. That's always questionable because I think we'll have some questions here. So maybe keep sharing because you might want to jump to something. I was curious of those chunks that we're just showing. One of them was main, and it was about 120 kilobytes. I'm wondering, is that your application code, or is that because I also saw like a runtime one? I'm just wondering what might be in there. Yeah.
Like in this main one. Let's look. You want to look at it?
I'm just curious. I can't tell if that seems big or not.
Yeah, I can't. So that's funny. Let me see something real quick. Let me just see. So that still isn't working. So there's something.
It works.
Yeah,
It works.
going back.
Deployment. No. Mark, it's working.
Yeah,
I don't know what you did and where, but it worked. And then he died. Okay. Well, thanks for. Oh, there he is. Mark, you're on mute, mate. Mark.
Personal
Mark. Oh.
Did you mute him again, Mark?
No, I did not. No.
Marky, you're all powerful. You should be able to unmute him, maybe.
No, it's weird. I can't actually. That would be a bit creepy if you muted yourself and then we were unmuted back into your personal conversations.
Okay, how about now? Am I back?
There you go.
Yep, we got you.
Did anybody else get kicked out of the meeting right in the middle of his presentation?
No.
Not me.
I swear I didn't do that either.
Well, I'm sure it wasn't you. I'm sure it was just
the world.
Hey, when in doubt, blame it on Mark. Rodin, that is.
No, you always blame it on Microsoft.
So part of the reason I was asking about that, Mark, about the bundled files there and what was what is, I'm familiar with Angular 1X.
Yeah, sure.
And but I know like with the newer stuff, like everything is in there all at once. Like the routers there. There's I don't even know what else. I mean, there's just a ton of stuff. I mean, it's a full-fledged framework, not like React where you need to add a whole bunch of pieces.
Right.
So is it smart enough during the bundle? Well, actually, correct me if I'm wrong. Is the router built into the Angular core package, or is it a separate package?
It comes already available to you, but you have the option to include it or not. So it's already built in. So I could literally, So yes, what you're saying. Yes, I literally have the router right now, and I can enable it by like just adding a router outlet and linking it up, right? So that's already in there. What we do, I can answer a little bit more questions about that, is we do tree shaking during this build process to try to get rid of as much dead or unused code as possible. But there's some, tree shaking is still limited, right? Because there's some parts that you just can't shake, even if it isn't used.
Yeah, no, I guess that's why I'm asking, because typically, if you're doing, like obviously this is being bundled through Webpack, so there's not going to be like an Angular.min or whatever. But I was curious, like in that bundling, if the router is included in the library, does it tree shake itself? Does it not get added to the bundle if you don't import router from whatever? And I'm wondering why, like, typically I would actually think an Angular app would be larger even for that small amount.
Great question. I'm going to write that one down, and I'm going to go do some research on that one. That's an excellent question.
It's a perfect answer. I'm going to get back to you.
No, but I really do want to know that, because that's the type of question that's really interesting.
Hey, Joe.
Yeah.
Yeah, on that, I remember, so Real JavaScript podcast, John Papa, and they actually talked about this initial, right, when you start up the app, and there was comparison of 4, I think, so Angular, React, Vue, and Svelte. And as far as I remember, 90 is what you're getting, 90 kilobytes, and I don't remember. But so we added something, so 153 looks good. And one of the comparisons, so I think Svelte was the least one, but when you start to add, and the tree shaking, so the researchers that Angular is getting bigger when you add more stuff and get into enterprise. So that bundle is actually ends up being more like smaller, right? When adding to others, while you add, so it's getting better for enterprise applications. But at the first, so I think Angular was the biggest one. I think, yeah, 90.
I had some questions for Mark about the CLI for Angular. You kind of related it to the Ruby on Rails scaffolding capabilities. Is it? I'm not. I know something about those scaffolding things. I'm nowhere near up to speed on the whole thing, but based on what you know about the two, is the capability at the scaffolding level similar to what they do, or is it just in its infancy at this point?
Yeah, good question. So the scaffolding, I don't think there is another tool that is as thorough when it comes to like creating your like database migrations and yeah, so because like with Rails, you can create your like full application, you can create all your CRUD operations, like all that stuff, right? So that's the level of scaffolding that's like supreme. I think Angular is not there, and I don't know if we're ever going to get to that level, but I think that where the scaffolding shines, especially if you use Angular material, you can set up like some of the more standard patterns, which is really helpful, and the scaffolding around linking all of your parts together. When you create a new component, when you create a new service, that just saves you like that cognitive space of, did I remember to link it up, right? So that's where our scaffolding kind of shines, is that did I remember to include this in my module? Did I remember to do this thing? Did I remember? I mean, like you lose a lot of that stuff, and then you gain just that productivity speed.
So you would probably say that you've got a little ways to go in terms of getting a nearly complete application built from the scaffolding level, because I've seen some demos of Ruby on Rails where they get 90% there.
Right.
Or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And
I mean, I used to do whenever I would do freelance work, I would do Rails because I could show the client the next day in a database integration, right, with no problem, because I didn't have to type anything.
Yeah, and I've worked with a colleague since more of my forte is actually Bash scripting in that arena. We just added a whole, everything's layers. Add another layer of Bash scripting on top of the scaffolding, and basically you wind up with a turnkey site generator just by asking a few questions to get some like logos and company names or whatever pumped on there. But I was always impressed with the Rails stuff, is because like it could create databases, it could make those database links, and so I'm really glad to see that somebody else is like trying to move in that direction anyways.
I think what could be really interesting, so we have this concept like schematics and builders and such, and I think that it could be really cool to build something that like you choose, like maybe an integration point, like you say, I'm going to do Postgres, or I'm going to do, Firebase or whatever, and then you could scaffold out like a complete application right there. But I don't think we'll ever do it as a first party plugin, but I think it could be cool to add that to the community, that we could go that far to kind of scaffold out that type of stuff. That would be fun. Maybe I'll make that.
So
I promise, no.
Yeah. So I guess anybody could build their own scaffolding components, so to speak, is what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Cool. All right.
I mean, if you ever heard of NG, I think it's NX or like NG, no, I think it's like NX Narwhal, that team, like their CLI is built on top of our CLI. And that's how extensible our CLI is that other teams have like built new versions of the CLI and just took what we made and it's like, yeah, we're going to add some niceness to it.
Yeah. And that's what I was talking about, just putting a whole nother layer of Bash on top of it. And
right.
Because it's a command line thing to begin with, you can go crazy with script in the front end of that. So
That's right.
Very cool. Thanks.
Yeah, sure.
I have a question. So,
Please.
You're a teacher at heart, right?
I am.
Ignoring your current employed bias, which is easier to learn from scratch as a JavaScript beginner? React or Angular? And please explain.
Yes. And this one is going to be, it depends. And I will explain. And it is not diplomatic because there are good reasons to learn React first. One reason I say that React could be easier to learn as a complete beginner from scratch is because of the wealth of beginner content out there for React. Like there's so much beginner content. And I think that is something that Angular just doesn't have because the community is really mature, right? We've been around with Angular 2+ since 2015. And so it's like people had just matured with the community. So that makes it a little bit harder, I think, for people. But when it comes to like getting something started, I don't think that the React tools give you the same rapid development as the Angular tools to get started. So you can get pretty far without getting into the more complex side of Angular. So you can get further in Angular than you can in React when it comes to complexity. in terms of like learning from scratch, because pretty quickly students get wrapped up in like props and components and stuff like that. Like they get stuck pretty hard on that. Then they get stuck on like hooks pretty quickly. But then when you're at hooks, that's just like changing stuff on the screen, right? Like that's all you're trying to do at that point. You're doing use state, but students get stuck. Versus the way that our model works, you don't even need to include in RxJS. You don't even need to get there before to just change something on the screen based on user input. And what the, and like I kind of said a bunch of times about the like, oh, I created this component, I didn't have to forget to include it or link it in my application. Students they forget that too, and they don't know why something's not working because the error messages aren't really lining up. So that's to say it depends. Right. So I'm not saying that I think React, though, because of the community aspect, that is a very compelling reason to learn React from scratch, as a beginner. Right. Very compelling. I'm trying to change that for Angular, though. I'll be honest with you. That's a big part of my focus is to change that for Angular. That's why I did this demo. It's like, look at how much work we got done in 30 minutes and deployed without any like headache. Right. Because I want people to know that the CLI is really the secret sauce for a beginner. I think the more advanced people, they'll use it. But I think if you're a beginner and you learn through the CLI, that's going to make you really fast and really effective.
So, Mark, can I jump in?
Please.
Actually, I was talking to Roden, but both Marks.
Yeah, sure. Whatever.
So Roden knows me. He's known me for years because I used to work with him. I started with Angular 1, 2, all the way up to 8, and these are not CRUD applications. These are I've done AMA, PwC, and Pizza Hut. So if you go to pizzahut.com, that's my work.
Let's go.
So that's Angular, but I also did React for them. They're going to switch that out to React, right? So I know React just as well as Angular. To your point, which is easier to learn, since I did Angular first, I went to React and I was going, oh, why did you do this, right? It's more like the aspect of JavaScript and HTML was in one file. Didn't understand that concept. Why would you want to do that? I split that up. I designed my applications around how I did Angular. So that was a bad part. I learned that later, right? So yes, learning React is better first, then go to Angular, because you learn so many different aspects of components, splitting components, the Saga, the hooks, those come later because that's just state management. Angular gives you state management as well. So that's my 2 cents on that. But yeah, RxJS, they both have it, right? State management, they both have it. You just have to know how you want to structure your project. And now I'm doing Next.js, which gives you the same thing as HMR, hot deploy, right? Server-side deployment, which is another cool thing out there. But yeah, Angular at heart, but I can code in both, and I will say it just depends.
Right.
But isn't like the Angular community, or isn't it very common to see Angular projects coupled with RxJS, like super common?
Yeah.
Whereas like React, you might see somebody do it, but it's not as common. But I think Angular seems to be kind of coupled with it, or at least everyone has decided it's a very good pairing, and so it's super common. In React, you don't necessarily see that many projects using RxJS.
I think the one thing that's beneficial of Angular is it's a little more batteries included, and React is more for the guys like, oh, I hate that router. I would never use that router. I'm going to use this specific. I'm going to use reach router, or I hate that aspect. So it's very much people who want to pick the best of class, or they have a particular approach they want to take to their stack. Where Angular, you can really do the whole thing pretty much right out of Angular.
I think router was a bad example. I mean, nobody uses reach router.
But you know what I mean? That's right, because it doesn't give you the full stack. That's
Yeah. No. Everyone knows that. React requires
Yeah.
a bunch of other pieces if you're building anything real.
And what's frustrating people with Angular at times, I think, is the fact that we tell you how you should do it. And people are kind of like, no, I want to do it my way, right? Like, I want more flexibility, more customizability. And we're like, yeah, but if you listen to us, you're going to get like a really maintainable app in the end as your app scales, right? And so at least that's what our theory is, right? Now, your mileage may vary because you may feel like that Angular just wasn't the right tool for you to do what you want it to do. And I think that that's an okay conclusion to come to, that you just feel like, yeah, Angular's not the right tool. But I feel like with React, the hard part is that people don't know what the right way is with stuff. And there's so many opinions around it, and there's so much decision fatigue, which leads to paralysis in students. And so analysis paralysis specifically, not like physical paralysis, like analysis paralysis, right? Because they don't know what to do, and then they want to buy courses. So interact with the people like who are the code newbies, the 100 days of code, who are learning React, and watch how many courses they buy when it comes to just like learning React, even though they're learning it in school, because they don't know what to do. And on the other side with Angular, people are just kind of like, yeah, I hate it because they tell me what to do. That's why I don't like it. I don't want to be like, don't tell me what to do. I want to just do it my own way. But we're like, nope, this is a good way. Use RxJS. Even though RxJS, somebody gave a talk here, RxJS is like still, so if I do anything in the Angular community, one of the things that I want to have an impact on is RxJS learning. Like, I want to like finally break it down in a way that people can actually get it, right? And it's not so abstract. Like, it's just so hard to like learn RxJS. And people's like, it's just events that happen asynchronously and you have a pipe, you're gonna tap into the pipe. Like, yeah, nobody understands that language. Nobody, I mean, yes, those are the technical terms, but that language is hard to grasp, it's hard to conceptualize. So that's like my like, what is it, the Magna Carta? Is that like a big like work of art or whatever? Like, if I figure out a way to teach RxJS to a point where you feel like, oh, that makes sense. Let me go like subscribe to some like sources and magnum opus. There you go. My magnum opus. Like, yeah, let me go subscribe and like get some events and like use this pipe. And I know what I'm doing, and I don't have to like stress out about it.
You mean that the marble diagrams don't explain it perfectly and simply?
Oh,
I mean, it's very good for tracking where your mouse is, and that's what we all need to build, right? I think we actually had a whole discussion about that. Somebody gave a demo on was it on RxJS?
Yeah, I was here for that one. Yeah.
Yeah,
a whole bunch of like
that was me 2 months ago.
Yeah. And like I thought, I know there was some like pushback on calling it like super promises or something, but we had a whole discussion about that. Yeah, about how like nobody's really done a good job yet at like simplifying observables. It always starts off simple and then they jump to like 500 miles per hour. Here's 8,000 different projection functions you can use or filters or whatever. And now it's like see, it tracks your mouse. Now learn these 5,000 methods. I think that's a big problem. I think that's a very noble pursuit if you can pull it off, Mark. Find a way to explain, observables.
Well, so here's the hard part about explaining observables, and I'll just say this, like really short, I promise. When you teach adults, because those usually who's learning this stuff, every adult will filter all the knowledge that you give them through their experiences, right? So if these adults are already programmers, that's the problem, is that the filter is so tight because they have so many other concepts. Well, at least that's what was hard for me as an adult learning RxJS. It's like, man, but I know promises already, but I already know, I've already built mental models around how I think events and asynchronous programming work. And so I'm filtering everything through that, but it's like, how do you account for that when you teach it? So when you do that, I think that's going to really unlock it for people, that you account for their existing knowledge of asynchronous programming, events, etc., because those are like the two most common terms. Like, it's just asynchronous programming and it's just events. Yeah, but like what? Like, so if I tap into it right now, it's still the same data that was already there. So if I take 5, like, I don't know. Yeah. whatever. I'll figure something out. Like, that's my jam.
I think Steve mentioned in the chat that Vue is very good for beginners. I would go a step further and say web components is a really good place to start because especially when you look at Vue and when you look at Angular and maybe one or two others out there and React to some degree, they're kind of taking those concepts and building a lot of stuff on top of them. But I mean, if you just take web components as they are today, they'll be different 6 months from now, but it doesn't matter. The same premises will be there. Lifecycle. Some form of props, custom events, and then the thing that we get from all these other libraries is some form of state management and communicating between these components. I mean, that's really what separates web components from React is the ability to pass it down through children, maybe at best. And then obviously Angular and I don't know what Svelte has. Is Ember still a thing? Is that still a thing?
Yeah. And we support web components, and like that's actually one of your migration paths. If you're like one of those companies that's like on Angular 1.8, like you can run a hybrid app where you can package your AngularJS app as a web component and run it inside your Angular app and start to move yourself off that way. So, because there used to be like no path forward. If there's Angular 1X, there was no path forward. Now we have like this like my whole migration tool that kind of walks you through. All right, like let's start getting you going. Let's start getting you moving over and over and over through these steps. And I think that's an interesting thing to see people do. Sam Julien is a really great person he's a developer advocate, I think, at also. He has a ton of content around like migrating from AngularJS over to Angular, and then there's like Hero Devs, a bunch of people who do this stuff. So, yeah.
Is that still common? Do you still see a lot of legacy Angular 1X apps out there?
There's still a community out there, people who loved it. So when we announced that we were extending the LTS for bug fixes and just like, security patches, people were like replying with a lot of like, excitement that they had more time to migrate because we had still been supporting it, right, up until 1.8. And so people was like, yeah, they still keep releasing new versions and new like updates, so we're going to keep using it. And I don't think people knew about the migration path that we have, because then back in 2015, it was like a hard fork. And I think that was hard for people. They just kind of shut out Angular itself and just said, I'm staying AngularJS. And now that there's this like fully fleshed out like migration path, I think people are starting to discover that we have that now.
So circling all the way back to 6 p.m. tonight.
Yeah.
Is Google going to kill Angular 1?
Yes. Well, kill is this. December 31st, 2021 is the end of our support for Angular officially. That's the end. Now you'll be able to use it. Actually, I have a blog post explaining this that's going out pretty soon. But yeah, you'll be able to still use it, right? But then we're not going to release any security patches and no more features after that. So we're really encouraging everybody that if you can, move to Angular, right? And if you can't, just rewrite all your code, which nobody can immediately. Use our hybrid model then, where you start, making yourself available to run inside this Angular encapsulated thing, and then you can start to make it happen for yourself. But then there are also teams that can help you with this.
That's so painful.
Yeah, it is. It's painful. I'll acknowledge that. If you're on like 1X and you haven't done any preparation.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That's tough. So if you are on 1X,
but that's also an old app at this point too. So.
Yeah, it is. But I'm still supporting an Angular 1X application. Very vaguely, but yeah. And instead of replacing that Angular stuff, we're just rewriting the whole application in a different. We're not even going to bother. Yeah, it's a 6-year-old application. There's only so much value to it at this point. If you're going to make the changes, make the most of enhancing the application and do it just a different way.
Right. Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Some people are just like, we're not going to fudge around.
So, Mark, how many other Angular DevRels are there at Google? Are you the person, or are there others?
No, we have a team. It's a few of us on the team. So, yeah, I'm not the only person. No. I couldn't do this by myself. Because we're always on tour.
Your hours. We get one to say he's ours.
Yes. So it's like The Departed, right? You see that movie where like the one guy was still belonging to like the Jack Nicholson's crew, even though he had joined the police department. He was like, yeah, I'm with the police, but I'm still with this gangster crew back here. There you go. Well, there's another guy in Russia that's on my team, Thomas. Okay. All right.
That helps narrow it down. There's a guy in Russia.
There's some knockoff Angular DevRel in Russia. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, somebody ain't coming to the team meetings. Is all I can say. I don't know what's happening. Oh man. Yeah, but there are other people who like advocate. Like, there's this other team. What's these people's name? This.labs, Tracy Lee and her people. Like, they're huge Angular people over there. They advocate a lot of people over at Otho and Isidre and their team. Like Otho, Angular is so funny because there are a lot of people who say, well, who uses Angular anymore? There's like so many people. There's like so many teams that use Angular, and Angular is all over the place, especially internally. For example, we use Angular a ton internally. Like, yeah, it's huge here. So we're not abandoning Angular. Like, it's alive and well and thriving.
I think Angular is like the Visual Basic of web, right?
Is that a compliment?
Yeah, it is. Like, people hate it, but it's still everywhere.
I don't hate Visual Basic. I have a lot of love for Visual Basic and VB.NET. Lots of love.
Yeah.
I think it's being kind of rough on Angular, actually, but
people hate it, but it's still everywhere. That's some kind of compliment. It's like COVID. Yes. People hate it, but it's still everywhere.
Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah, now we're the COVID.
Angular is like COVID.
No. VB is like COVID.
Also, Angular is like VB.
Yeah.
It's like COVID.
Some transitive relationship there.
But the thing is, if you want to go in and today you want to now we're using this nice team app right here, right? This what is it? Conference calling on Teams. If you want to add a web app to your Teams client here, you look for a design system that has the team styling. You can only get a React design system that's based on React. If you go to Microsoft Flow and UI, they don't have an Angular version of the styling.
Microsoft prescribe their own framework for building Teams apps that's written in React. So they have a framework that you build on top of, and the framework's in React.
Unbelievable. The betrayal.
Didn't they have a set of styles, though, I thought, that were just CSS styles, or am I making that up?
They do, but if you want the Teams styled components, then you'll only find them in React. But yes, you can actually put an Angular app inside it if you really want to double all of your extra bonus code.
Yeah.
Oh, don't do it. All right, friends. I can take one more question. How are you so good at speaking? Oh, thank you so much for asking that, because of this great group. Any more questions?
All right. Well, then, thank you very much indeed, Mark Thompson. It is always a pleasure to have you. It really is. And we really, really appreciate this. This has somewhat renewed my faith in this group, that more people will turn up to an online meeting. We just, this has been awesome. Thank you very much.
We just have to have Mark every month. What are you doing on February 18th?
Just Eugene's right there. He's listening to you.
I will be hanging out in the audience on February 18th. Listen to Eugene give a dope talk. That's where I'm going to be.
Cool.
Hey, thanks to Mark for a great presentation, and I always enjoy the after presentation back and forth. I think that's really the meat of the bone right here. So, thanks.
Actually, I have one more, like maybe quick on responsiveness. Like, what do you recommend as a developer advocate for responsiveness tool, like Bootstrap, Angular Flex Layout? Few words on that.
Oh, sure. Yeah, so when it comes to, I'm going to be honest with you. I tell people now, if you can do your stuff in Flex and Grid, and if you got to use a design system, you know, there are other cool stuff out there, like you got Material or Bootstrap, you can use both of those, but Flex and Grid, I think, are the way to go because of the native browser support and how few lines you can get that full, like, responsive UI with all that nice centering and formatting with very few lines, and you don't need to bring in a whole, like, thing like Bootstrap to get that anymore.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mark, for saying that.
No problem.
That's our native designer, Megan.
Yeah.
Mary, you're on mute.
No. That was good.
I didn't want to interrupt, but good seeing everybody. I know I haven't been to this group in a long, long time, but hello, Mark, Joe, and Mark, and everybody.
Hello.
Hi, good to see you all.
Wait, Mary, you're an advocate too, right? Engineering developer advocate as well?
Yes, I'm an advocate, but then, well, actually talking about which IBM is going to get.
I think Mark is trying to pass you a message, Mary.
Oh.
No, I was just saying. I mean, if you have to leave IBM, come to Google. I'm sorry, I can't. Well,
okay.
I love to have you.
That was the weakest veiling ever. Hey, Mark, quick question. And these can just be yes or no's, so we don't have to keep you much longer. But is there a server-side, version or use case for Angular? And then the same question with developing mobile applications. I know, with React, we've always had server-side React, and then there's something like React Native. I don't think many of the other frameworks really have that, but I was just curious because I thought I heard something about server-side Angular at some point.
So there is server-side rendering with Angular, and then for mobile, I'm actually giving that talk on Tuesday. There are quite a few options. You can do your PWA route, which is still a mobile app, but if you need to get native like access, you can go through something like Capacitor and not use Ionic, but do Capacitor only and drop that into your existing Angular app. Or you can go, this one team has a thing called NativeScript. I don't know if you folks heard of that. It used to be Telerik, and then they sold it off, and this one company picked it up. And that is like the closest to React Native, where you actually have you have to replace like your view code, right? Like instead of using main, you have to use their like default view elements, etc. But you build like a native app you have, and their claim to fame is that you can speak directly to the device or the framework APIs, like like Swift API, Android API, directly from TypeScript. That's their claim to fame. Like,
I have a NativeScript T-shirt that I got at an NGConf, and I've never looked up what it is.
Well, that's what it is. I mean, that's a very compelling use case to be able to just like, I want to access the like Apple FaceTime API, right? Like, you don't have to like go install some plugin. You just code it just like you would code the Swift code, but just write it in TypeScript. Very interesting.
Cool. And then
Sweet.
It's Thursday. All right.
I think we're good.
Thank you very much, everybody, for coming. Much appreciated. And Eugene, next month, everybody come and listen. He's got a wicked setup in his lab.
Awesome.